Let us begin by understanding what it truly means to live from the end, because most people misunderstand this completely. They believe it is about wanting something strongly, visualizing it occasionally, or hoping that one day life will rearrange itself in their favor. But living from the end is none of these things. It is not an act of effort, it is an act of identity. To live from the end is to assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled so fully that it becomes your natural state of being. It is to occupy in this very moment the version of yourself who has already received what you desire, not intellectually, not as a theory, but as a lived inner experience. You are not trying to get there, you are thinking from there. You see, the moment you place your desire in the future, you create distance. And anything placed in the future remains just that, out of reach. But when you bring it into the present, when you dare to feel it is done, something shifts within you. The chase dissolves, the longing fades, and in its place arises a quiet certainty. This is the secret. You must become inwardly what you wish to experience outwardly. If you desire success, you do not wait for success to validate you. You assume the feeling of being successful now. If you desire love, you do not wait for another to complete you. You become the one who is already loved. This inner shift is subtle, yet it is everything. Because your outer world is not responding to your words or your wishes, it is responding to your state of being. Most people remain trapped because they continue to check their external world for confirmation. They look at their circumstances and say it hasn't happened yet. And in doing so, they unknowingly reaffirm the very state of not having it. But living from the end requires a different discipline. It asks you to trust your inner assumption more than your outer evidence. You must learn to close your eyes to what is and open yourself to what is felt within. When you truly live from the end, there is a sense of relief, a sense of completion. There is no desperation, no striving, no questioning of when, because in your inner world it has already happened. And once it feels natural to you, once it feels like this is simply who you are, then the outer world has no choice but to reflect that state back to you. This is not about pretending or forcing belief. It is about gently returning again and again to the feeling of already being. It is about allowing that state to become familiar, comfortable, and real to you. And as you persist in this inner conviction, something remarkable begins to occur. Your reactions change, your thoughts align, your energy shifts. You move differently, speak differently, and perceive life through a new lens. Not because you are trying to act as if, but because you have become it within. So I ask you to consider this. Who are you being right now? Not who you want to be, not who you hope to become, but who are you in your deepest assumption, because that, only that, is what you are living from. And when you truly understand this, you will realize there is nothing to chase, nothing to force, and nothing to wait for, only a state to embody and a reality that must follow. Now, as you begin to grasp what it means to live from the end, you must come to an even deeper realization. Your state of being is the true creator of your reality. Not your actions alone, not your circumstances, not even your efforts, but the state you consistently occupy within yourself. Your state is your inner atmosphere. It is the sum of your beliefs, your feelings, your assumptions about yourself and the world. And this state is not neutral. It is always creating. Whether you are aware of it or not, you are constantly projecting a silent command to life through how you feel and who you believe yourself to be. If you feel unworthy, life mirrors situations that confirm that unworthiness. If you feel confident and certain, life begins to arrange itself in ways that reflect that certainty. It is not coincidence, it is correspondence. The outer world is faithfully echoing the inner state you dwell in. This is why two people can walk the same path and experience entirely different realities. One sees obstacles, rejection, and delay. The other sees opportunity, movement, and progress. The difference is not in the world they walk through, but in the state from which they are perceiving it. You must understand this clearly. You do not attract what you want, you attract what you are conscious of being. So long as you remain conscious of lack, you will experience more lack. Even if you speak words of positivity, even if you attempt to act confident, if your inner state is rooted in doubt or fear, that is what continues to express itself. The world does not respond to surface-level effort, it responds to your dominant state, and this is where many falter. They try to change their lives without changing their state. They attempt to force outcomes while remaining inwardly the same. But no amount of action can permanently override a state that contradicts it. The state always wins, because it is the source. To live from the end, then, is to deliberately choose and occupy a new state, a state where your desire is already fulfilled, a state where you are no longer seeking validation, but embodying fulfillment. And this is not something you visit occasionally, it must become your dwelling place. You return to it when doubt appears. You return to it when circumstances seem unchanged. You return to it until it feels natural, until it feels like this is simply who you are. And as you persist, your world begins to shift, not because you forced it to, but because it has no choice. The outer world is bound to reflect the inner arrangement of your consciousness. It must conform to the state you consistently embody. This is why mastery of your state is everything. It is the foundation upon which all experience is built. Change the state and you change the outcome. Sustain the state and you sustain the reality. So do not concern yourself with chasing results. Do not measure your progress by what you see outside. Instead, bring your awareness inward and ask, what am I being? What am I feeling as true? Because the moment you take responsibility for your state, you reclaim your power. You are no longer reacting to life, you are directing it. And once you truly understand that your state is the cause, you will no longer waste energy trying to fix the reflection. You will simply shift the source. For it is not the world that must change, it is the state from which you observe it. As you begin to understand that your state is the true cause of your experience, another challenge presents itself, one that quietly pulls most people back into old patterns. It is the habit of looking at present circumstances and treating them as final, as fixed, as something that must be accepted as truth. But if you are to live from the end, you must learn to detach from what is currently visible. The world around you is not a prediction of your future. It is a reflection of your past assumptions. Every condition you now witness once lived within you as a thought, a belief, or a feeling sustained over time. And because of this, what you see now is already old. It has already been created. To react to it as though it is happening for the first time is to unknowingly recreate it again. This is why reacting emotionally to circumstances keeps them alive. When you see something you do not prefer and immediately feel frustration, fear, or doubt, you are not changing it, you are reinforcing it. You are agreeing with it. You are giving it life by accepting it as real and final. But living from the end requires a different response. It asks you to see what is and yet not be moved by it. Not because you are denying reality, but because you understand its nature. You recognize that what is visible is only a shadow, a delayed echo of what you once believed. And if it is an echo, then it holds no creative power in this present moment, unless you give it that power through your reaction. So instead of asking, why is this happening? You begin to ask, what must I assume now? Instead of trying to fix what is in front of you, you return inward and reaffirm the state you have chosen. You remain loyal, not to appearances, but to your inner conviction. This requires discipline because the senses are persuasive. They will show you evidence that contradicts your desire. They will tempt you to doubt, to question, to waver. But you must remember, if you allow your belief to be determined by what you see, then you will always remain bound to what has already been created. To detach from circumstances is not to ignore them blindly, but to refuse to let them define you. It is to say, this may be what appears now, but it is not the end I have chosen. And in that quiet refusal, you reclaim your authority. There is a calmness that comes with this understanding. You no longer feel the urgency to force change, because you know change begins within. You no longer feel discouraged by delay, because you recognize that the outer world moves according to the inner shift. And you no longer feel controlled by conditions, because you see them for what they truly are, reflections, not causes. As you persist in this detachment, something begins to stabilize within you. Your reactions soften. Your mind becomes less entangled in appearances, and your awareness rests more firmly in the end you have already accepted as true. And from this place your power deepens, because you are no longer dividing your attention between what is and what you desire. You are no longer wavering between two states. You have chosen and you remain. So let the world show you what it will. Let circumstances rise and fall as they may, but do not bow to them. Do not grant them authority over your inner state. For the moment you stop reacting to what is, you stop recreating it. And in that stillness, the new reality begins to take form. As you continue in this practice of living from the end and detaching from what is seen, you may be tempted to believe that a single moment of intensity is enough, that one vivid visualization, one powerful declaration, or one surge of belief will permanently alter your reality. And while such moments can be inspiring, they are not what sustains creation. It is not intensity that shapes your world, but consistency. A brief moment of conviction followed by hours of doubt cannot produce a stable result. You may touch the state for an instant, feel its reality, and then return to old patterns of thinking, questioning, and reacting. In doing so, you step in and out of the state, never remaining long enough for it to fully take root within you. To live from the end without wavering is to understand that your inner state must become a dwelling place, not a temporary visit. It is something you return to again and again until it feels natural, until it no longer feels like an effort but simply who you are. This is why consistency carries such power. Each time you gently bring yourself back to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are reinforcing that state. You are impressing it more deeply within your consciousness. And over time, what once felt unfamiliar begins to feel normal. What once required effort becomes effortless. Consider how any identity is formed. No one becomes confident, successful, or fulfilled in a single moment. It is through repeated acceptance of that identity, through sustained inner agreement, that it becomes solidified. The same is true here. You are not trying to force a new reality into existence. You are allowing a new state to become so familiar that it naturally expresses itself. There will be moments when you forget, moments when old thoughts arise, when doubt whispers, when circumstances try to pull your attention outward. This is not failure. This is simply the movement of old patterns. What matters is not that you never waver, but that you do not remain in the wavering. Each time you notice that you have drifted, you return, not with frustration, not with force, but with quiet certainty. You remind yourself of who you are being, you re-enter the state, and in doing so, you shorten the distance between where you were and where you have chosen to remain. This gentle persistence is far more powerful than any single burst of emotion. It builds stability, it builds trust within yourself, and it gradually dissolves the habit of returning to old states. You must also release the need to constantly measure your progress. When you look for immediate external proof, you are pulled back into inconsistency. You begin to question whether it is working, whether you are doing it correctly, whether anything has changed, and in that questioning you step out of the state of already having. Instead, let your focus remain on the inner alignment. Let your success be measured by how naturally you return to the end, how easily you sustain the feeling of fulfillment, how quickly you recover from doubt. This is where true progress is made. Over time, this consistency creates a shift that feels almost effortless. You no longer need to remind yourself constantly. You no longer feel the pull of opposing thoughts with the same intensity. The state becomes stable, and with that stability comes a quiet knowing. And when that knowing is established, the outer world begins to reflect it with equal consistency. So do not seek a single moment of transformation. Seek the steady embodiment of the end. For it is not what you do once that shapes your reality, but what you return to again and again until it becomes you. As you begin to practice this steady return to your chosen state, you will inevitably encounter another subtle barrier, one that has led many to believe they are failing, when in truth they are simply becoming aware. This barrier is doubt. It arises quietly, often disguised as reason, as logic, as a voice that questions whether what you are assuming can truly be real. You must understand, doubt is not the enemy. It is a byproduct of former states still echoing within you. It is the residue of past beliefs that have not yet dissolved. And so, when it appears, it is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are moving beyond what you once accepted as true. The mistake most make is not that they experience doubt, but that they give it authority. They begin to listen to it, to entertain it, to follow it into a chain of thoughts that leads them away from the end they had already claimed. In doing so, they unknowingly shift their state, returning to uncertainty, to waiting, to questioning. But you are not called to eliminate every doubtful thought. That would be a struggle without end. You are called to remain unmoved by it. A thought by itself holds no power unless you accept it. It may pass through your awareness, but it does not define your state unless you identify with it. So when doubt arises, you do not fight it, and you do not fear it. You simply observe it and refuse to make it your dwelling place. You return once more to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. This is the discipline, not the absence of doubt, but the refusal to abandon your chosen state because of it. There is a quiet strength in this, a stability that grows each time you choose the end over the appearance of contradiction. You begin to realize that you are not at the mercy of your thoughts. You are the one who decides which thoughts to give life to, which feelings to sustain, which state to occupy. And in this realization, doubt begins to lose its influence, not because it disappears entirely, but because it is no longer believed. It becomes like a distant echo heard, but not followed. You must also recognize that doubt often seeks validation through your senses. It will point to your circumstances and say, "Look, nothing has changed." It will urge you to measure, to analyze, to confirm whether your inner work is producing results. And if you accept this invitation, you are drawn back into the very state you are leaving behind. Instead, you remain faithful to the unseen. You hold to the assumption that it is already done, regardless of what appears. You trust that what you have accepted within must, in its own time and way, express itself without. This is not blind belief. It is understanding. It is knowing that the inner state is the cause, and the outer world is the effect. And once the cause is established, the effect is inevitable. So when doubt arises, let it come and let it pass. Do not wrestle with it. Do not try to silence it. Simply refuse to let it define you. Return to your chosen state with calm assurance, as one who knows where they stand. And as you persist in this quiet refusal to waver, something within you becomes unshakable. The old patterns weaken, the pull of doubt fades, and what once felt like effort becomes a natural stability of being. For in the end, it is not the presence of doubt that determines your reality, but your willingness to remain faithful to what you have already assumed. And when you no longer give doubt a place to rest within you, it loses the power to lead you away. And now we come to the final refinement, the one that gathers all the others into a single living practice, the quiet assumption that it is already done, and the willingness to live accordingly. Up to this point, you have understood what it means to live from the end, to recognize your state as the cause, to detach from appearances, to remain consistent, and to no longer be ruled by doubt. But all of this must culminate in a simple, unwavering attitude, the acceptance that your desire is not becoming, not approaching, but already fulfilled. This acceptance is not something you announce once and then forget. It is something you carry within you as a quiet knowing. It does not need to be loud or dramatic. In fact, the more natural it feels, the more powerful it becomes. When something is truly done, you do not question it. You do not seek reassurance. You do not look for signs. You move through life with a calm certainty because there is nothing left to resolve. This is the state you are invited to embody. To assume it is done is to remove the burden of how and when. These questions belong to the mind that still believes it is waiting. But you are no longer waiting. You are no longer trying to figure out the path. You have accepted the end, and the path unfolds on its own. And from this assumption, your behavior begins to shift, not through force, but through alignment. You find yourself thinking in new ways, responding differently, making choices that reflect the version of you who already has what was once desired. You are not acting as if in a superficial sense. You are expressing what you have accepted as true within. This is an important distinction. Many attempt to imitate the actions of a desired self without first assuming the identity of that self. But action without inner conviction is hollow. It carries effort, strain, and inconsistency. True alignment, however, is effortless. It flows naturally from who you believe yourself to be. So ask yourself, if it were truly done, how would you feel? How would you see yourself? How would you move through your day? And then, instead of waiting for those feelings to arise from external proof, you allow them now. You give yourself permission to be that version of yourself in this moment. You may notice a lightness in this, a release from the tension of trying to make something happen. Because you are no longer striving, you are being. And in that being, life begins to rearrange itself in ways that feel almost effortless. There will be moments when the old habit of waiting tries to return. Moments when you are tempted to look outside and ask, has it happened yet? But this is where your understanding must remain firm. You gently return to the knowing that it is already complete, whether seen or unseen. And as you persist in this assumption, your world begins to mirror it. Not always in ways you expect, Not always in a straight line, but always in accordance with the state you have accepted. What once felt distant begins to feel natural. What once seemed impossible begins to appear inevitable. This is the power of living as though it is done. It is not forceful, yet it is absolute. It does not demand, yet it transforms. It is the quiet authority of one who has already arrived. So carry this with you, not as a technique, not as something you must remember to do, but as a way of being. Let it inform your thoughts, your reactions, your sense of self. For when you truly assume it is done, there is nothing left to chase. And what you no longer chase has no choice but to come to you.